hero was one of those brilliant people whose amazing skill covered half of science. He was the first person to show that light comes in waves, and he cracked the code of the ancient hieroglyphics of Egypt. His name was Thomas Young.
By the time he was 14, he'd already written his own autobiography in Latin. In it, he claimed he could read by the time he was 2 and had read through the Bible twice by the age of 4. Thomas Young did a lot of work on optics, but by profession he was a medical doctor, spending his summer in Worthing.
There was an argument going on about vision, and in particular how we focus on nearby objects. If I look at this shell down here, do I alter the length of my eyeball, make it longer, in order to get a sharp image of the shell on my retina? He decided to find out, and he used an instrument like this, a pair of dividers with rings on the end. And what he did was, this is pretty unpleasant, he slit one of these actually into his eye socket behind his eyeball, and then brought up the front ring to the front of his eye and measured the length of his eyeball. Then he did the same thing while he was focused on a nearby object. So he looked at this, slipped the back ring behind his eyeball, brought up the front one, measured it again, and it was exactly the same. So he proved that to focus on a nearby object, we do not lengthen our eyeball, and he concluded that what we must be doing is changing the shape of the lens inside. Young was interested in all sorts of things, but especially in light. Now, to show you this, we've got to come somewhere where it's fairly dark. So we're going under the pier at Worthing. There was a great argument about whether light was made of bits, corpuscles, or waves. He was sure it was made of waves, and he reckoned if it was, he could do an elegant experiment. What he did was to take light of a single colour, and he shone it through a pair of slits very close together. Now, I've got here one of those pointers that lecturers use, which has got a laser in it, you see, and here I've got a pair of very, very thin slits in a photographic slide.
There's less than a millimetre between the slits, so to see the two, you need a microscope.
So if I press that on, the red light from the laser shines straight through the pair of slits. And just look what happens when it goes on a piece of paper. Here we are. There, it just looks like a single spot, but as I move away, it seems to separate into dark and light bands. It's very weird, really. And what's going on is that these two slits are actually acting as two separate light bulbs, if you like, and there's waves going out from each one. Now, when those waves come together and the two crests come together, you get a very bright bit. But when the crest of one is against the trough of the other wave, then they cancel out, and it's just dark. And as a result, what you see out there is light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. They're called interference fringes. So Young did indeed prove that light comes in waves, and these have been called Young's slits ever since.
What Young's slits showed us, once and for all, is that light is made of waves. But perhaps his most remarkable achievement was linguistic. A curious stone slab arrived in Deptford in 1802, and it's been in the British Museum ever since. The stone was found by a French soldier at Rosetta in the Nile Delta in 1799, and it's become known as the Rosetta Stone. The stone has the same message in 3 languages, but no one could decipher 2 of them. It took Young just 1 summer in 1814 to decode the stone, but as I've only got a couple of hours, I've asked the British Museum expert, Carol Andrews, to help me.
Now, it's fairly obvious, even to me, that there are 3 different bits of this, of which those are pictures.
Hieroglyphs.
Those are the hieroglyphs,
hieroglyphs,
yes. And this looks like Arabic.
No, this is Demotic. This is the 3rd and most cursive of the Egyptian scripts.
Okay, and this is Greek.
That's right. The Greek says that this decree was to be copied in Greek, in Demotic, and in hieroglyphs.
Is there something you can show me that says the same thing in all 3 scripts?
Yes. Here we have the ancient title of the king of Egypt, Nisu Biti. Then we have the cartouche, the elongated oval containing the royal name, in this case Ptolemy, Ptolemy, living forever, beloved of Ptah. In the Demotic, of course, the term for king is now Per-Ar. Per-Ar is our famous term pharaoh. And there is the king's name, Ptolemy.
Ah, okay.
And of course, in the Greek section, the Greeks used the word Basileus, that's king. Ptolemaios, that's Ptolemy.
So Thomas Young not only deciphered the ancient Egyptian demotic language, he also did the groundwork for deciphering the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Though he was a genius, Young died unhappy. He felt he'd never really made it as a doctor.